Just because some of us came through the hurricane with our roofs doesn't mean we're all in good shape.
We are now in the hurricane season, so as we stay prepared, here is some important information to help you prepare for whatever storm blows your way.
Please go out and check your roofs, because what I saw in St. Elizabeth tells me that even the best looking roofs are not altogether sound. Please check on your nails that hold down the sheeting. Please check on the lats that hold the sheeting and the lats to the rafters. Please check on your wall plates. Check on your windows for vibrations and stability. Check the roof for vibrations and stability. That is a quick stopgap check and firm up everything, but with screws, not nails. Nails tend to split wood and create a gap where you could have had mud. Go on your rooftops now.
The hurricane season runs from June 1 through November 30. It normally peaks between August and October. Be prepared. Identify an area in your home and bring pets indoors. Keep pets on a leash or in a carrier. Store at least a week's supply of food and drinking water for your pet. Monitor your radio or television for weather updates and instructions. Be prepared.
Be safe. Together, we are stronger. During this tropical storm, let's remember, we are stronger together. Check on your neighbors, especially those who may need a little extra help, or elderly and vulnerable. A kind word or small act can make a big difference. No one should be alone in this. Together, we can get through it. Stay safe. Stay connected. Together, we are stronger.
The hurricane season runs from June 1 through November 30. It normally peaks between August and October. Be prepared. Secure the outside of your home. Check the roof of your house and repair areas that might leak. Also, make sure that zinc sheeting is properly fastened. Trim all large trees within 10 feet of your house. Remove patio furniture, potted plants, garbage bins, and toys and place them inside the home. The wind can turn them into missiles. Cover windows with storm shutters. If you don't have storm shutters, use plyboard to cover windows and glass doors. Monitor your radio or television for weather updates and instructions. Be prepared.
A category 5 hurricane. That is not something that you should take lightly. And so this morning we have many of our ministers here with you to give you the information, the correct information. I am in so many WhatsApp groups and I see all of these videos coming. Many of them are fake. And so we urge you to please listen to the official channels. We come here to give you information. We bring the ministers. We are taking questions from online also and from our journalists who are here. And so if you have a question, you can put it in one of the chats and we'll try to get to it. Please listen to the official sources. And with me today, I have several ministers and we also have the Met office with us too on ODPEM. We have Minister Desmond McKenzie, or Minister of Local Government and Community Development. He's also the Deputy Chair of our National Disaster Risk Council, and so he's leading a lot of the operations here. He is our prime or minister or focal point in relation to disaster management. We also have with us the Honorable Darrell Vaz, our Minister of Energy, Telecoms and Transportation. He's playing a very, very important role in all of the prep, especially with our utility providers. We also have with us the Honorable Matthew Samuda, our Minister of Water, Environment and Climate Change, and he'll be giving you significant updates also. With us, we also have Minister Robert Nesta Morgan, who is our minister that's responsible for works. He's been out there working to clean drains, gullies, and supporting our communities across this country. He will give you an update on the status of all of that. And of course, we have our team from ODPEM. They are the focal point for this. We are now in ODPEM's office. The Emergency Operations Center is live downstairs. Hopefully later on we can send you some images of what's happening there. We have teams that work throughout the night. They're working 24/7, monitoring what's happening across the country. We have reps from all of the key agencies, including the security forces and also the JDF there. So we are really getting prepared. Don't worry, your government has done the work, and we're here to report on what has been done and to take your questions this morning. So without much ado, we know the entire country is waiting for the man of the moment, Evan Thompson, or ever faithful head of the Meteorological Office in Jamaica, to give us an update on where Hurricane Melissa is and when we should expect to start feeling the effects of this hurricane. Evan?
Thank you very much, Minister Morris Dixon, and good afternoon, good morning to everyone. Good morning, especially to our ministers who are in attendance, and of course, all the distinguished persons who are here, including, of course, you, the media, and the members of our public. I want to say that this has been a long journey, but we are in for the run. We are about to be impacted even more by a hurricane that is a major hurricane moving over the waters of the Caribbean Sea. If you take a look at the image that is being projected, I believe that most of us are able to see this, but it shows that the center of the hurricane is now some distance, over 100 miles, to the south of Jamaica. It is south really of one of those points along the coast of St. Elizabeth. So it is really in that general direction, which would signify that it is closer to the western end of the island than to the eastern. You know, there's a common feeling that if it reaches there, that means the eastern part is free of all folly and will not experience anything that is related to this hurricane. But I would like to tell you that that is not really the case. And although the center has moved past your longitude, which is how far west it is, you will still see that the situation will deteriorate further right across the country, and all parishes are likely to be impacted. This is a Category 5 hurricane. There are no additional categories for hurricanes. We go from 1 to 5. Any stronger than that is still a Category 5. And so it is at the strongest category that it could possibly be. The system, yes, it could gain additional strength, but it will still remain a Category 5 hurricane. Now, it is just about at the point where the projected path of it will indicate that it will move closer to the island. Over the past many hours, it has been moving directly west, which means that the latitude has remained the same. It has not moved any further north or dropped to the south. It has stayed at the same latitude, continuing westward over the waters south of Jamaica. So we will show you the chart of how it's moving in a little while, but let me show you what our radar image is projecting as well. Radar, the Doppler radar in Jamaica is showing that there are numerous showers associated with the system. The center, as I said, some distance to the south, but around that center, immediately around it, is a very tightly knit area of showers, thunderstorms, intense activity, also very, very, very strong winds. That is where the maximum winds of the hurricane are actually concentrated, in the eye wall, which is right around that eye. And it's a very distinct eye. It's a number of a couple of miles probably wide. And so it will actually show when it moves, if it moves over the island itself, a number of areas will experience the calm of the eye. But of course, that cannot be possible until you have gone through the eye wall. And again, after the eye passes by, you have another aspect of the eye wall to go through as well. But this system shows, this picture shows that the system is generating lots of showers right around it. There are bands of rainfall that extend some distance from that eye. And here we see many of those bands also extending across sections of Jamaica. Many of our parishes have already started to experience some of the activity from this hurricane. A number of parishes have experienced rainfall, mainly light to moderate, but in occasions it has been heavy rainfall. Also experiencing tropical storm force winds, mostly gusts, but in some areas those sustained tropical storm force winds will extend, will continue over some areas and will increase over the number of areas of the country as the system moves a little bit closer. Now it is at the point where we are expecting that it will start to turn toward the north. This means that it will get closer and closer to Jamaica. That is the projected path. I have to keep saying that because it's often said that I said one thing and this is something else. But the truth is, this is a dynamic situation. It changes as the moments go by. And so the track changes are also possible. Earlier I was telling you that it would make landfall in Clarendon. Later I was saying it would have been in St. Elizabeth. It's not that anything was wrong with what was being said, but there are updates to the forecast based on information that is gathered and as the system moves closer. As you are closer to impact, the forecast gets more accurate. So when I tell you that we are being hit by a hurricane, you know that it is accurate. We are being hit by a hurricane. At this time, I can only say that it is likely that we will be hit by this hurricane. It is moving closer to us. There is just a small window of opportunity where it could continue to shift. The track could continue to be shifted toward the west, and then it could be moving over the waters to the west of Jamaica. Of course, all of us are hoping for that and praying for that. But at the same time, we have to be practical. Right now, the projected path takes it to the southwestern part of Jamaica, impacting either eastern Westmoreland or extreme western St. Elizabeth as it makes its entry, its landfall on Jamaica. Then it's expected to continue moving to the northeast. All at this time, it is expected to be a major hurricane. Right now, a category 5, it's quite likely that it will drop in terms of the strength of the system slightly to a category 4 before it makes the landfall. But still, let us prepare ourselves for a category 5 hurricane, if you can actually prepare for a category 5 hurricane. And then it will move over that southwestern part of the island, moving toward the northeast. We expect that the exit will be just about in the vicinity of St. Anne, along the coast of St. Anne, which means it is not going directly north, but somewhat east of north. So making its entry near the border of Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth, at this time that's a projection, and then moving across sections of Trelawney and St. James, in the interior of the island through the cockpit country probably, and then moving across along to the coast of St. Anne. So that's the projected path. During this time, it's likely that it will weaken a little bit more. It may exit the island possibly as a category 3. It might still be a weak category 4 at that time, and then it will continue on its way closer to the eastern part of Cuba. So that is the forecast. It is expected that that entry, that landfall, will take place early on Tuesday. That means within 24 hours, tomorrow morning. It could actually be during the early hours before the sun. Is there a sun? We haven't seen it for a few days. but when at sunrise, we still have that time that we call sunrise, whether it rises or not. And so at that time, we should be seeing that there is a landfall of the center of this hurricane. A landfall means yes, that the center is moving across the coastline, but it also means that the areas around that coastline are going to be most impacted. Around that eye will be most impacted. So parts of eastern Westmoreland, parts of western St. Elizabeth, and then surrounding areas of those moving as it continues to move, the closest areas to that center will get the greatest impact. We'll get the strongest winds reaching hurricane force. So hurricane force winds are expected over parts of Westmoreland as well as St. Elizabeth. The extent of hurricane force winds is just about 80 kilometers, I believe. Because it's about 40 on either side of the center. So that's the extent of hurricane force winds. Depending on where that center is, you can measure whether your area is likely to experience it. But of course, there is some shift in exactly where that landfall will take place. Then the tropical storm force winds extend a much greater distance and should cover the entire island, or most of the island. To the east will be impacted by tropical storm force winds, even though the center is not moving across your area. So if you think that you live in Kingston, and you will not experience the eye, and so you are free from fear or worry or concern. I don't encourage fear or worry, but I do expect you to be concerned about what is taking place. If you think that you are free from that, think again, because the heavy rains will also affect you. The strong winds reaching tropical storm force could still continue to affect you as we go through the day on Tuesday. That's all the way through tomorrow. The exit of this system is likely to take place in the evening hours on Tuesday as well, so it's not expected to remain over the island until Wednesday, because there will be a slight increase in the wind speed, in the direction of, in the speed of movement of the system. Right now it's still moving at only about 6 or 7 kilometers per hour, but it should pick up a little bit as it is moving across us, and so we expect only about 6 to 8 hours as it moves from the south coast to the north coast. The rainfall is what is being shown. The projected rainfall is what is being shown on this chart that you're seeing here. This is showing that you could have anywhere up to 30 inches of rainfall over much of the country. And that includes all central parishes, it includes eastern parishes, and to some extent, some sections of western parishes could see that. If you're in hilly terrain, you should also look out for even more rainfall, because in hilly terrain, the rainfall amounts are expected to be higher. Of course, we expect that you will have a lot of flooding from this. And you can see on the picture that all of the island will experience even up to 20 inches of rainfall over sections of your area. So if you are in a flood-prone area anywhere across the country, you can expect that flooding is going to occur as long as the system moves in the direction that is projected. Landslides are also a very real possibility and likelihood, because as the soil is saturated and as the soil is loose, we are expecting that we will have landslides as well. Moving on, this picture shows a little bit about the storm surge that is expected. And there are some areas that are being highlighted where we see in the Black River area, that is where the highest likelihood of storm surge is at this point, based on the current projection of the track. The center should be just west of there, and therefore they would have the greatest likelihood of experiencing higher storm surges, getting up to like 16 feet. That's a possibility, or 14 feet, I should say, in that area. As you move along the coast, of course, there are some areas that might not be impacted significantly by storm surge, especially if you don't have a gradual slope onto the land, but you might have a cliff face. But if you're moving into the Portland Cottage area, Salt River area, because you're in that little inlet, you also have a strong likelihood of experiencing some storm surge. It would not be as high as experienced over in the west, but you should also look out for some surge occurring in those areas of Clarendon and going into the Old Harbor Bay area. That's a possibility. Also in the vicinity of, as we move closer to Kingston, as St. Catherine as you move from across the border from St. Catherine into Kingston, St. Andrew, along the coast, could also experience some amount of storm surge. And that is basically it in terms of the technical aspects of this presentation. I just want to encourage all of us to have faith in this time, believe that we will get through it, and we will get through it together. Nobody is on their own. If you feel that you're on your own, reach out to somebody. And if you see somebody who is alone and who seems very depressed at this time, seems very anxious, please reach out and offer some words of assurance, because this is not the end. It's the end of my presentation, but it's not but it is not the end of our time here on this earth. We will move past it, and it's not all doom and gloom. The good news is that we can still hope for that shift in the track toward the west that would take the center off the coast of the island. So I'm leaving you with that last message. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Evan, for that update. As usual, I'm going to take the questions for Evan. If anybody has any questions, we will get back to more questions at the end. So I just want to check if anybody has any questions. All right, over there. How are we going to get the microphone over to you? And please say your name and introduce which entity you are with.
Mic check, mic check, mic check. You hear? Oh, okay. You hear me. Okay. Morning, everybody. Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News here. Question for Mr. Thompson. In terms of the system's movement once it hits Jamaican terrain, in the event of a landfall, so it leaves the waters and it reaches our terrain, the hilly terrain, the valleys, all the different characteristics that we have, how will it reaching landfall affect its movement as it goes across the country?
Thank you for the question, Nationwide News. What happens when a hurricane moves off the water is that it loses its main source of energy. The warm sea surface temperatures is what really fuels these hurricanes. That's the primary thing that fuels them. When they move over land and there is no source of water, they tend to plateau or start to weaken. If there is a lot of friction on the land, if it's not just flat land that they're moving over and there are lots of hills, that also helps in kind of weakening the system. So that's why we often see systems moving from the east when they move over Haiti and the mountains of Hispaniola, that they tend to weaken significantly. Over in the western end of the island, although there are hills, they may not be significant to weaken that much. So there will be slight weakening, but we do expect that the system will still be a major hurricane when it exits. Hope I've answered. Okay.
I'm not seeing any other questions as yet. And just to all of our students who are watching, you heard some concepts from your geography class, longitude and latitude. Your teachers weren't just teaching you things for teaching you sake. They actually have relevance. You heard Evan using them. And so I'm hoping parents, if you don't know what Evan was talking about, ask your students, your children. They should know. We teach it in school. So we're going to be moving on now after having heard that very sobering assessment from Evan Thompson about this Cat 5 hurricane that is coming towards Jamaica. It's projected to come to Jamaica and will come across the country and will exit Jamaica still as a major hurricane. We're going to now hear from Minister Matthew Samuda, our Minister of Water, Environment and Climate Change, for some additional updates.
Thank you, Minister Dixon, colleague ministers, heads of agency, PS, members of the media, Jamaicans listening and watching at home. 165-mile-an-hour winds, 17-foot storm surge, 30 inches of rain in some places is nothing to play with. I think Evan has been trying to bring it home to Jamaicans for the last few weeks. It's almost 2 weeks now based on the slow pace of the storm, the seriousness of the storm, and the potential damage that it can cause. We've started every press conference where I've had the opportunity to speak by simply saying it is not time to panic, but time to prepare. The time for preparation is all but over. The time now is to listen to instructions, certainly if you're within any of the areas for evacuation, and to listen to reputable news sources, certainly the Met Service, JIS, OPM, Prime Minister's accounts, the Ministry accounts, because we're already seeing a lot of false news going around. Areas that are said to be flooded, which are not flooded, which can hamper evacuations and can hamper people trying to get out of harm's way. So we're asking all citizens to listen to reputable news sources that publish the Met Service data and the Met Service guidance, as well as NWA's guidance, and of course all the guidance from utilities. Moving into our utilities, and certainly NWC, to which I have responsibility for. As at midday, we will start publishing status updates every 3 or so hours in terms of which systems are indeed up and which systems are being impacted. We're already having impact in some systems in eastern Jamaica, which would have gotten the first set of waves where we're experiencing single phase power. But in those areas, it would not be suitable to mobilize generators yet. So you will start to see, as the storm moves, well, makes a turn, Evan, and goes north and starts to get closer to us and power systems start to go down, you will start to see disruption to water systems, we imagine, later this evening, going into early morning tomorrow. So we are encouraging everyone to backfill their storage, whether it is they have a tank or buckets or whatever it is they're using to put aside clean water. Now is definitely the time to put aside your water for storage and to use sparingly. Every drop will count. I am assured, having met with the senior management team of the National Water Commission this morning, that we are well placed to dispatch our 50-plus generators very quickly after the storm. We're in constant contact with suppliers. We're in constant contact with our emergency-based staff. And we're comfortable with where we are in that regard. I'm also comfortable with the work that we're doing with the JPS. JPS is, as we speak, in some areas, still, I know, doing some maintenance work on lines that go to particularly critical water infrastructure. And that does, I think that is a marked change from Beryl last year. As I said, this is a short update. The time for preparation is almost at an end. We encourage everyone to listen to the notifications and the advisories from reputable sources. We will ask you, post the storm, to be patient as we get the Water Commission systems back up and running. But we do have things in place, we believe, to get to 80% of our customer base relatively quickly. Now, that getting to, as we've said before, does not mean uninterrupted supply. Generators need resting time. Generators do have to be refueled. We will have to monitor these systems very clearly, but it will be a significant improvement from what you would have experienced in Hurricane Beryl. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Samuda. We're going to be going to Minister Morgan now, who will update you on the work that he's been doing with the NWA to prepare us for the storm. Minister Morgan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morris Dixon, and thanks to the team here at ODPEM, members of the media. I see JSIF. I also see Minister Mackenzie, Minister Vaz. The National Works Agency, through its Emergency Operations Center, has so far received 15 reports from across the island. These reports include fallen trees, rockfall, down power lines, and landslides. We've responded and removed the impediments and repaired, or reopened rather, all but one of the roads that have been blocked. And we're actively working to reopen the one that is currently blocked, which was impacted by fallen trees. And I think this one is in St. Anne's Bay near the roundabout. We continue to urge people to exercise extreme caution if they have to be outdoors at this time. Rock falls are an imminent threat. We have seen this along the Little Bay Main Road in St. Mary, and there are other places that are susceptible to this kind of situation, so we urge caution. We've done quite a bit of work across the island in terms of drain work mitigation, and several critical drains across the island have been impacted, have been targeted, and we will continue as long as it's safe to do so. So you would have seen even yesterday, we had a front-end loader in the Sandy Gully trying to continue to create a pathway for the water to move to the sea. On Thursday, we also started work on the channel to the sea in the Sandy Gully. And this section is critical. And I want to explain a little bit as to what we have done at the Sandy Gully. We were in the process of planning a massive rehabilitation of the gully, also a massive desilting program for early next year. But the hurricane did not acquiesce to our timing, and as such we had to move very quickly to the urgent work. The most important thing that we are trying to do is, one, protect the lives and property of the people who live adjacent to the gully past the bridge near Seaview Gardens, and two, the bridge that is on Spanish Town Road, which is a very critical bridge. It connects to the ports. As I said before, it connects to Jamaica's most important health facility, KPH, also Bustamante Children's Hospital if you're traveling from that side. So it's very important that we not allow that bridge to be damaged if the hurricane does inundate that area. We've removed 500 loads of silt from under the bridge or in the vicinity of the bridge over the last 5 days. Some persons are saying, well, we should clean all the way to the sea. That is 1.5 kilometers from the bridge to the sea, and it is 37 meters wide. If that section that we cleaned was 500 truckloads of silt, think about how many trucks and excavators and backhoes and front-end loaders would be required to remove 1.5 kilometers of silt with a width of 37 meters, a couple thousand trucks. So we have done as much as the engineers have said we can do at this time to create a pathway under the bridge so that water can flow. Based on what we have done, the bridge is safer, the flow is no longer compromised. And while we have done much work to mitigate the impact of the impending hurricane on our infrastructure, we want to appeal to the public. And I know Minister Mackenzie has done so, and Minister Samuda has done so, Minister Vaz. Do not interact with infrastructure that you think is compromised. If the bridge looks shaky, do not attempt to go on the bridge or across the bridge. Do not try to traverse gullies that are flooded. We've had historical evidence of persons in very powerful vehicles seeking to traverse gullies, and they lost the competition. So we're advising the public that this is a serious hurricane. Our gullies cannot be used while they are flooded. We know that persons may be wanting to go to their farms and visit their relatives after the disaster, but we must listen to the bulletins from ODPEM and the other relevant entities to tell us when the infrastructure is safe. The National Works Agency will carry out a very quick assessment of infrastructure after the storm has passed and when it is safe for our teams to do so. Because you see a power line falling does not mean that the lines are dead. And sometimes our teams have to wait on the utility companies to tell us that these lines do not have electricity in them before we can clear the road. And those are some of the things that we have to do before we start clearing. But we'll be doing critical assessment of our important infrastructure, and we'll advise the public when this infrastructure is in a state that it can accommodate persons and traffic. So we are asking citizens to avoid using or approaching any road or bridge or structure that appears to be damaged, cracked, or unstable. And you can report such cases to our emergency center, and I will repeat the number. I will give you the number here: 658-213-2557. That's 658-213-2557 to 60. Let me give it a third time: 658-213-2557 to 60, or 876-312-3991, 876-312-3991, and 876-312-3987. Or you can contact the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. I wish to thank the NW teams, the contractors and first responders, and community volunteers who continue to serve on the front lines of this period of national emergency. I want to repeat again. Can you repeat again, Desmond? Or I want to repeat. I want to repeat. Do not cross flooded gullies and roads. Do not cross flooded gullies and roads. Do not seek to navigate compromised or damaged infrastructure, whether it be bridges, whether it be culverts. Report damage to ODPEM and the National Works Agency. I also want to say finally, some gullies will not be able to accommodate the volume of water that is about to fall on Jamaica. I'm speaking directly to the persons on the McGregor Gully and Burger Gully. You know that when it rains heavily, the gully overflows. There are other communities across the island that know when it rains heavily, the gullies are not able to accommodate the water. You should move. The government has opened many shelters, over 800 shelters across the island. The shelters are safe. The National Works Agency and the emergency services may find it challenging to rescue you during the hurricane when the gullies have topped their banks. So we're asking again, while we have done mitigation, mitigation will not necessarily conquer a Category 5 hurricane. So we're asking persons along these gully banks to be careful, to watch, to leave if you can, or to leave if you, well, you should leave, as we know that the gullies will not be able to accommodate the water. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Morris Dixon.
Thank you very much, Minister Morgan. And as I listen to you, you know, as Jamaicans, we remember other times when we've had floods and we've had rivers that became impassable and we had people trying to go through gullies. And as you were speaking, I was remembering something that only Jamaicans would have reference to, was that Can I Cross It song? Remember Clifton? Yes, that's what you were saying. Clifton Brown, he said, we cannot cross it and we're not going to cross those bridges and we're not going to go across those rivers. We're going to heed the warnings that have been given here. And so, with that said, we are now going to be having Minister Vaz, but before that, just reminding you that as Minister Morgan has said, a lot of work has happened. We do have NWA here in the room, so we can also take some questions after. But their teams have been out there working really hard to do as much mitigation work as they possibly can. And so we thank you and we thank the teams that are out there working with the NWA. We are now going to move to Minister Vaz. Everybody wants to know what's going on. We know the airports are closed. Energy, transportation, telecoms.
Morning. I'm moving away from saying good morning. And from now until whenever we recover, I will just say, Almighty Father, spare us. Let me start with some of what I've said before. The airports remain closed until such time as the hurricane passes. The toll booths are all open, all, both on the east-west and the north-south, not just on the main, but on the exits as well. And those will remain open until such time as the recovery of the hurricane is at a point where we can reopen. JUTC, all bus service has been terminated. Only emergency services for JUTC, which I'll give you some information. And as I would have said last night, that we have also activated our rural school buses, which will play a critical role in rural Jamaica. We have over 60 school buses that are in all parishes, across all parishes. So those will be utilized, save and except for the fact that because of how they are designed and their weight, in muddy conditions, they will tend to sink. And that is obviously because of the safety standards put in for the safety of the children. But we'll have to find a way to utilize them as best as possible. Sorry. So, JUTC, as I said before, regular services are suspended until it is safe to operate. JUTC is in emergency response mode with teams on standby for evacuation at Rockfort, Spanish Town, Portmore, and all 5 rural school bus regions. JUTC has responded to several calls for evacuation since Saturday. Unfortunately, only 103 persons have been evacuated. And that includes up to today. The figures for today, including today as of 11 o'clock, is 148, sorry. So there has been an uptick, but way, way beyond what is required for a Category 5 hurricane. Only 1 person in Port Royal, 42 in Tower Street, Raytown, 15 Rocky Point, Portland Cottage, and Parity and Sandy Bay, 55. I want to make an appeal again that take everyone at his word, regardless of where it enters and where it exits. There is going to be massive flooding as a result of the surf that is going to require persons to relocate from their existing locations. So again, I can only add to the call, but advise you to listen to the government and listen, or should I say, if you don't want to listen to the government, listen to Evan. JPS report, there are no major incidents currently on the electricity grid. However, the system is beginning to experience the effect of heightened wind and rainfall extending across the island. There were areas in Portland and St. Thomas that had outages, but crews were unable to respond immediately because of unsafe weather conditions. These are being addressed along with other reported outages across the island. At 9 a.m. this morning, there were 51,439 customers without electricity, broken down as follows: 33,633 customers in the West, that's 65% of the outages, 13,009 in Central, it's 25%, and 4,797 in the East, 10%. Outages are increasing with deteriorating weather, and with each outage affecting on average 50 to 100 customers. The major cause of outages are trees on lines due to the high soil saturation levels. There are approximately 550 persons pre-positioned and are responding to outages as weather conditions permit. Let me remind you, take note, the My JPS app and the emergency line 888 called JPS, which is 225-5577, 888-93-5577. Let me repeat those. 225-5557, 888-935-577. Also, My JPS online on all social media platforms. The JPS mobile app can be downloaded from the Apple Store or the Google Play. I recommend that everybody does that so that you can at least report and get a reference number in order to send. So let me say once again that we continue to monitor. I must tell you that I've gotten several calls around the corporate area of power outages, and we have not had any level of rain or wind. So I did have some terse words this morning with the JPS, because I told them that if that is what is going to be the norm in terms of 12 hours to respond, it's not going to happen. It's unacceptable. So keep faith, keep strong, and know that you have a government that is going to be there for you, with you, but you need to be smart. If you're smart, we can work together. If you are not, unfortunately, you will pay the consequences. This hurricane is real. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Vaz. For those who are just joining right before Minister Mackenzie comes, just reminding you that Melissa is a Category 5 hurricane that's projected to make landfall somewhere near to the border of St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland. Airports remain closed. A lot of drain cleaning work has been done and mitigation work has been done. Evacuations are being done through JUTC. JUTC has been there with the buses waiting to evacuate people, but many are not going on those buses. And so we urge you to evacuate now. Evacuate today because the conditions will deteriorate. You also heard that there have been some outages across the country in terms of electricity, and a lot of that has been related to trees on lines due to the saturation of the soil. And we'll give you the updates again, the key points for you to remember at the end of this. And so now we're going to hear from Minister Desmond Mackenzie, or Minister of Local Government and Community Development, and Minister who has responsibility for ODPEM. I'm wearing an ODPEM pin now. They just gave me a pin. I'm apparently now an honorary member of the ODPEM team, and I'm very happy to be a part of this team. You're all doing a fantastic job, and thank you. So, Minister, please join us.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning to each and everyone, and especially to my colleagues. Welcome, Minister Morgan, for joining us this morning, and to our viewers. First of all, let me start off with some information on our shelters. As I have reported previously, there are over 800 shelters across Jamaica. Of the 800 shelters that are open, only 76 of the 800 shelters are seeing any activities at all. The number of persons so far, the up-to-date information that I have in my possession, which was presented to me based on the networking that we have been doing, represents 972 persons in shelters. There are 4 parishes that have no one in the shelters. Clarendon has the highest number of persons so far, 311. Followed by St. Thomas with 227, and Kingston and St. Andrew with 179. I am hoping that the next update that is presented will show a much greater picture, because I'm concerned that in the parishes where this system is heading, the numbers are small. St. Elizabeth, our number is 27. In St. James, 24. In Westmoreland, 32. And the numbers are very low. I am expecting that by later this afternoon, we will see increased numbers of persons going to the shelters. We are anticipating, based on our projections and the work that we have been doing, that close to 50,000 persons will be relocated, either moving to safe grounds or in the shelters. But we are expecting that over 50,000 Jamaicans and more will be moving. It is important, ladies and gentlemen, that I again emphasize the importance of the mischief that is being made, the false and malicious information being circulated about the use of shelters. Someone sent me a message which says that there's a fee being charged for the use of shelters. Nonsense. What is happening is that there is an attempt by persons with bad intention to create confusion at this time. The country don't need confusion at this time. The only passport one need to go to the shelter is that you go, the shelters are there, we separate male from the females, families stay together, walk with your medication, walk with some water and crackers for the first couple of hours, but once the centers are activated in a way, there is nothing that those persons who are in the shelters will be denied of. Again, I urge Jamaicans not to listen to misinformation. It is bad at this time for us to be getting this kind of information. We still have some challenges with some of the persons on the streets, the homeless. On my way here this morning, I passed about 6 of them with their cell phones doing TikTok. I want to make it clear. The mandatory order has been signed and is in effect. Let me advise the public that the Director General of ODPEM can take the necessary actions that he deems fit. And persons can be arrested and fined for not complying with the order. We don't want to go there. Evan was here earlier on and he explained the challenges we face from water, wind, lightning. The government is doing all of this in the interests of the country. We are ensuring that the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, as I said yesterday, is on ready, working closely. Let me break to invite the Most Honorable Prime Minister to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, along with the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management and the other agencies, are fully activated. And already we are seeing where persons have been reaching out, seeking assistance, and we have been responding as we get the calls. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is 11:30 in the morning. There's not much time left. We have done everything that we can. And I am concerned. So far, I presently have the team working on getting more details out of the various parishes from our coordinators as to the numbers in regards to the shelters. The issue around the question of cranes that I raised, the city engineer for the KSMAC have been engaging contractors, and I understand that there is a method that is used in the industry that would allow the cranes to remain. I'm not a technical person, but what I do know is that I noticed at least 2 of the ones that I spoke about was taken down, and I want to commend them for that. But Jamaica, we are in the final stage of Melissa's coming. We can only do so much. At the conclusion of this press briefing, I'm going to take a walk or a ride on the streets of the corporate area to see what is happening and try to engage some more of our homeless population to go into the shelters. So this is my brief update on the state of readiness. A couple reports coming in, Minister Vaz, that there are a couple block roads in Portland, and the municipal corporation has moved so far to regain access to those roads that were blocked. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Mackenzie. And we now will move to our leader, our Prime Minister, who will be speaking to you. He has been coordinating all of this effort that we have. He is the chair of the Disaster Risk Management Council, and he has behind the scenes been calling all of us ministers and having us give our updates to him. I know later today he will also have a cabinet meeting, and so he is leading us on this mission to make sure that we are ready and that we have our systems in place for recovery. And so please welcome our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, ministers, members of the press, Jamaicans at home and abroad listening. First, let me say that the mobilization of the government and our other stakeholders and partners could only be described as heartening. I'm generally satisfied that all the entities, the entity heads and staff have responded. Right now, we're here at the ODPEM's headquarters, where the national emergency apparatus has been stood up. This is where all information will be fed and coordination will take place. So if I were to grade the preparation of the country, I'm a hard marker, so I would give it an A-. However, there are still some areas of concern which we have to be frank about. We have over 880 shelters, 881 I believe, and I have personally visited shelters during disasters. It is not always a satisfying experience, but they do serve a critical purpose, particularly for those persons who have no alternative. I do believe greater effort would have to be made to ensure the comfort of those persons who have to use the shelters. And I am monitoring reports that persons have turned up to shelters and shelters are not, they may be activated, but for example, they can't find the person who should open the shelter with the key. They're there, they know it should happen, but they're just not on spot when people come. It may be corrected 20 minutes after, 30 minutes after, but the discomfort of not being immediately accessible would have already made it into the public domain. And so, Minister, I think we have to strengthen this part of our preparedness of getting the shelter managers to not wait until someone is coming. Once we activate the shelter, it should be open and ready for persons to come in, even if no one comes. And so that is something we need to refine. I think we have addressed the issue of food and other preparations being in place. We have moved them in proximity. We don't always put them in the shelter beforehand because all kinds of things can happen. And when people actually arrive at the shelter, they don't have the supplies. So the supplies are pre-positioned and can move very quickly. This leads me then to say to the public, the government is not telling you that everything is perfect. There's no plan that is perfect except the plan of God. And man is fallible. So errors will be made. But that is not an excuse. In a time of disaster, we must take a zero-fail approach to the systems that we are building. So in as much as that I'm talking to the public, I'm also talking to the heads of the institutions that are gathered here. Make greater effort to ensure that there is zero fail in our operations. We also note concerns about drain cleaning. The government has said we have spent over $400 million on cleaning drains and making preparations. But yet we see videos circulating of drains not clean. One of particular concern would be the mouth of the Sandy Park, the Sandy Gully, forgive me, the Sandy Gully drain, where there is a clear buildup of sediment right at the mouth. That is where the drain meets the sea. And there is concern that that could cause flooding. Now, of course, I am not an engineer, but from what I have been told and what I understand, the NWA has made a trench, in fact two, I believe, through that mound of sediment that has built up, which would allow the flow of water. But in any event, if there is a significant flow of water, the drain is already at sea level, and it is likely that what will occur is that the flow of water will wash the sediments and all the garbage down into the sea. So while it is a concern, it could cause flooding, the general thought is that it would not necessarily, in this instance, be a cause of flooding, because the pressure of the water coming down would be enough to move most of that sediment. But regardless of whether or not that is the case, the NWA has made a provision of cutting a trench through the sediment. The difficulty being that it is over a mile of sediment, and therefore the government, we would not have been able to, even with a month's notice, to move that sediment from the gully. So the best effort would have been to clear a path through the sediment. Also, we have taken a strategic approach. I've been informed by the NWA that in terms of cleaning the drains, they are not able to clean the length of all the drains. What they try to do is to clear the entrances for the tributaries into the drains and anywhere that a potential blockage could occur. So close to bridges where the gully is narrow. And I use this as a segue. Yesterday, I received a call from the NSWMA explaining to me, I thought I saw Audley Gordon here, that they're receiving increased calls for garbage collection. And of course, they were trying to influence my mind to make greater allocations to the NSWMA over the NWA. But we will make sure that all the entities have the appropriate allocations. But in that conversation, I was told that the greatest call now was for the removal of cuttings and trees. It's very important, though late, and the NSWMA will do as best as they can with the equipment that they have to move the cuttings, because it is the cuttings that creates the greatest harm to the blockage of the gully. So I know that citizens are following what we have said, cut trees that are a danger, but then don't move the trees and the cuttings to a point where the water could take them and then they end up being lodged, turning sideways and creating a block in the gully pathways or drain pathways. If you can't get them carted away and they have to be on your property, secure them so that if there is flooding or water passing through, they are not moved into the drains, because that is where the real flooding impact will be caused. So I make that appeal. So the NSWMA will be moving as quickly as possible. I doubt they can be moving now and for the next 24 hours until after the hurricane. So I'm appealing to all citizens, if you have cuttings, secure them. Don't allow them to be washed away onto the roads. They will end up obviously in drains. And that goes for any garbage that you may have at this point in time, because that is what could really cause drains and gullies to be blocked and to overflow. I am sufficiently satisfied that the security forces are properly deployed in such a way as to prevent any break in law and order. Whenever there is any kind of disaster, there is always be that element in our society who is not a part of the common good and has no concern for their neighbor. And we have to protect ourselves against them and protect them as well. And the security forces, they are properly mobilized, and they understand how we should posture in this disaster. The rights of citizens must be respected at all times, even in a disaster. And so we have a legislative framework that will not just guide the emergency responses of the NSWMA and NWA and ODPEM and so forth, but it also guides how the security forces will respond. We urge persons to stay inside, stay within the precincts of your home, the curtilage of your property. Don't venture outside unnecessarily because the winds, as you can see, can pick up at any time. The rains can come at any time. You can be caught in a flash flood. So we urge you to, at this time, stay inside. That's the safest place to be at the moment. And that gives less work to the security forces. Looting and other kinds of antisocial behavior, which I would include having parties in the rain, playing football in the rain, running in the gullies. I urge all our citizens, and I make a special appeal to our young people. Some have never really experienced the true impact of a hurricane. I urge you to stay inside. And I ask our heads of households and elders to engage with our young people so that they understand. More and more, we are becoming sensitive to the issue of persons' mental health. Situations of uncertainty lead to panic, and it can lead people to deviant behavior that sometimes we who have been experiencing this matter may look on and say, this is stupid behavior, but really it is just part of the psychology of fear and anxiety that we need to have a better appreciation for, and we really need to talk to our young people so that they understand and they don't make light of it or make more than it is. Now, I'm fairly satisfied, Minister Vaz, that Beryl would have improved our level of preparedness for the continuity of service in the event of a disaster. So between JPS and our telecoms, I'm expecting that there should be a certain robustness, meaning the ability to withstand the impact, and a certain resilience, meaning the ability to recover quickly. I'm not saying that you won't lose electricity. Already, I heard the report that over 50,000 persons are without electricity. But, compared to the customer base, and at this time, we seem to have been standing up fairly well. Not all our poles have been that were old and at end of life have been replaced, but I gather that a significant number of them have been replaced, particularly in the southwestern end of the island. And I know that the telecoms, they have made the arrangements to ensure that their transmitters and their generators are in place. I gather that there is a cable issue for one of our telecoms provider where some persons may be out of internet, but I know that they are working to have those restored as quickly as possible. The JDF is on full alert. They have put in place their necessary protocols. They have a system where they have specialized teams for disaster response. They call them the DART. and those teams are already stood up. But directives have been given that the entire JDF is now the DART. So their engineering corps, their various regiments and so forth, everybody is will be used for the national good if we have a strike on our country through this hurricane category 5 that could cause significant dislocation. So we are as prepared as we can be. Of course, there is still room for improvement. In a disaster, you want to have the country of a singular mind. That means we are focused, because if it is that there is dissonance, then the need for a reaction and the reaction time is slowed, and that itself becomes a disaster. We have always had a very slow, if not non-response to the call for evacuation. And it is a balance between respecting the rights of persons to stay and protect their property and trying to balance the national good of saving lives and the expenditure of resources unnecessarily. I think generally we have struck the balance in favor of respecting the rights of citizens to stay where they are, though we give them the information for them to make the decision. We are in that zone where we have given the information. No one can say that the government was not forward-leaning in giving the information to persons who are in areas of risk. You have been warned. So it's now up to you to use that information to make the right decisions. Nevertheless, yesterday we issued an evacuation order. I'm not sure if Minister Mackenzie listed the communities for which the orders apply, and ODPEM, in assessing the situation, will effect the order depending on how the situation unfolds. Meaning that ODPEM with the security forces could very well go into some areas and effect, I'm using that word euphemistically, effect the evacuation of persons who are there. I don't know if you have started doing that yet. You have? You have started to go into areas to ask people to move and to actually move them. Okay. So I just use this opportunity. I know it has been explained already, but this is an unusual system. Normally a hurricane, you focus on two things, wind and rain, because it happens very quickly. Now we have to focus on three things. It's wind, rain, and the length of time it will probably linger over the country. Whilst we understand wind and rain and what it can do, but if it stays for a very long time, you're not just dealing with saturation. You're dealing with a higher level of destruction, a higher probability of landslides, a higher probability of flooding, even in areas where flooding would not have taken place. So we have to bear that in mind and be prepared. Very quickly, as we move to thinking about recovery, a part of this preparation exercise is to ensure that we can immediately go into the relief phase, which is to ensure that we can get food and other provisions and medicine particularly to persons who, especially persons who are low-income earners, who would have stocked up from Thursday or even Wednesday. They would have gotten maybe a 5-day or a 6-day supply. By the time of the impact, they would have been running out of supply. So ODPEM, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, they must be on the ready that immediately after the passage of the event, the communities that would be in need, which we would have already known and identified, that provisions, humanitarian relief is up and ready for those persons and communities. In terms of the impact on the GDP, last burial had an impact on 2 quarters of GDP performance. It did drag down our growth, and this event would have already started to do so. Every day that business activity is closed, destruction of property, especially public infrastructure, the closing of our airports, the closing down of our hotels, all of that will have an impact on our economy. And we have to therefore be very cautious about how we spend. There are those who would be saying, spend now, spend now. You have to be so careful about how you spend. And so we, in the government, we have developed a multi-layered disaster response system in terms of our fiscal management, and that involves first and foremost the funding of the disaster management fund, which is funded, and that's where we're doing our first drawdown from now to do all of this mobilization. And then we have a contingency. So in addition to provisioning the fund, in the budget we actually have a line item, a contingency, and that's about $5.3 billion that we can pull on. Of course, it doesn't mean that the money is there, it's just that we've budgeted. We have to wait for the tax flows and or pull from other areas, but it is budgeted. And so we will be able to do the emergency responses based upon that threshold that we estimate what a disaster could need to be funded in the immediate time after the hurricane. Outside of that, we have various insurance provisions that are triggered by the threshold of impact, and then we have credit facilities that we have arranged. So we should be able to mount a response, but that is all dependent on the level of the catastrophe. All right. So if it's a burial type catastrophe, or maybe even a little bit more than burial, we should be able to manage. If it's bigger than that, then we'll have to recraft. But what we have done so far is the first expenditure. We have spent it on ensuring that the infrastructure can withstand the impact. So that's mitigation, cleaning the drains, the gullies, and so forth. The second expenditure would be on ensuring that the MPs and other entities that have a kind of direct relationship with communities and people, that they are provisioned. So we have given them the first provision, and that is to deal with any emergencies might happen. You know, somebody runs out of prescription and they can't get the prescription right away. Somebody runs out of food and they come and say, we don't have any food, or a community is at risk and you needed to get some sandbags. Just quick emergency responses. So we have provided that. After the disaster, there will be other provisions to come. But it's all very well structured. And from the burial experience, you would know that that was the way in which we approached the disaster. So all in all, I think Jamaicans can rest assured that everything that needs to be done for the provision and preparation of a response to the disaster is done. We are already now thinking about the second phase, which is the relief phase, and then we will move into the recovery, and then we will move into rebuilding, depending on the extent of the damage. As I close, and I'm looking at where the hurricane is positioned south of Jamaica, moving westward, given the circumstances, the best outcome would be that it continues to move westward. The models are seeming to converge that it will make a northward turn. So I've gotten so many calls, and I have been on my knees in prayer. And I know that there are Jamaicans here praying for us, Jamaicans overseas praying for us, but more than that, it would appear that the entire world is praying for Jamaica. I've gotten so many calls from leaders from all over the world, in particular CARICOM leaders, who are all praying for Jamaica at this time. I'm a firm believer in prayer. I believe, in our national anthem, which calls on the Almighty to guard us with his mighty hand. And in everything that has happened, in all the storms that we have faced and the hurricanes and the disasters, I am a firm believer that God has guarded us, even in spite of ourselves, even when we deviate and even when we are recalcitrant children. It is clear that there is a divine hand that is at work, and we should continue to petition as much as we can in our private moments, gathered as prayer warriors, as many have done, to pray for our nation. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much, PM, for those words. I am going to pass it on to the media while we contemplate our prayers to God at this time for Jamaica. Is there anyone who wants to go first? All right, TVJ.
I have a lot of luggage in my lap. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My first question is for PM/ODPEM. There was a talk of the mandatory evacuation for the 7 communities in Clarendon, St. Catherine, and St. Catherine, as well as St. Andrew and the other, about 4 parishes and 7 communities. I wanted to find out, because PM had a banter with ODPEM head about the security forces possibly moving in with persons under the mandatory evacuation order. Just trying to find out, is it that persons were, for want of a better word, forcibly removed? Because he spoke about balancing rights, and how many such persons complied following the evacuation order.
All right, thank you. And I just needed to remind our colleagues, all Jamaicans, of where the areas are: Port Royal, Kingston, Portland Cottage, Clarendon, Rocky Point, Clarendon, Old Harbour Bay, St. Catherine, Taylor Land, Bull Bay, St. Andrew, New Haven, St. Andrew, and Riverton City, St. Andrew. Those were the areas under the evacuation order. Minister?
Just to say that when the evacuation is being undertaken, the buses are accompanied by all elements of the security forces. So they go with the JDF, they go with the police, they go with fire, and they go with ODPEM officials. So that is the purpose of it. We are still talking with communities, but we have to allow communities to understand that, you know, it is not just the way that they want to. But I'm hoping that we will not really physically move anybody. We will continue to persuade Jamaicans, so, and I know they will eventually in the long run.
Okay. And
just to be clear, as I said, that we are now in the zone of respecting the rights of the people, but providing them with information. But walk with me for a moment. Let's not bring this into the universe. But if there were a catastrophic event and persons were there in the path of the catastrophe, and we were still able to go, because it's a big if we were still able to go, then the country, the government, and myself, I couldn't sit by and see my citizens in danger, and I am able to go and save them, even if they don't want to be moved, and I don't do it. But I couldn't do it unless it is within the law. And that is why we make the evacuation orders, so that if that scenario were to materialize, within the law I am acting. And so the compulsory evacuation orders have been put to ensure that there is a legal framework for the government to act. And that's why we put in place, we make sure that under the Disaster Risk Management Act, we put in place the declaration of a threat to Jamaica, so that we are able to then do the necessary actions. And then, should the hurricane hit, we would move from a threat to actually declaring a disaster area. So at all times, there is no break in the legal framework under which the government is operating. My understanding is that buses and the police and the military were mobilized into communities. I've seen some of the videos with the police over their loudspeakers encouraging persons. So that's what we've been doing, encouraging them. But I'm not certain if we have done any compulsory evacuation. I don't think so. I don't think so. But the provision is there.
okay, may I? Yes. Okay. And this is for Minister Mackenzie. You spoke about the shelters being activated yesterday. One of my colleagues in St. Elizabeth visited the Treasure Beach area earlier today. There was no one at Pedro Plains Primary, and the Flagaman Community Center, I was told, was in poor condition. Some of the windows were out and persons had to seek shelter at a neighbor's shop. So wanted to find out what was the issue with shelter in the Treasure Beach area, and if there are any other issues across the island.
Okay, there are some shelters which will be relocated based on its present location. And there are a number of shelters in St. Elizabeth that would fall in that category, where because of the intent of the system and where the system will land, those shelters would not be relevant at this point in time. We will check on that one that you mentioned. My understanding that Pedro has gone to Newell, so those shelters are not in operation. So I want to make the point that those parishes that the system will focus on mainly in terms of where it lands. We have since last night been recalculating, and we have removed a lot of those shelters that were slated to be used. Okay, so we've been doing that, right? We use some of the shelters. What I'm now seeing, based on information that has just come to my attention, is that some persons now, because of this late hour, they are now going and creating their own shelters in schools, and that was never a part of the original thing. So what we're trying to do is to manage that, and I think we'll be able to get on top of that.
So we'll get an updated list then with the shift to Newell?
Right, yes. We will be doing that once I get that complete list. I will update and thing. And the shelter managers, working with the members of parliament and the councillors and the mayors down in that area, has been very, very active working on that area.
Good morning.
Thank you, Minister. Just one point. Yesterday, we had a shelter in, I believe it was Central Kingston. It was very close to the waterfront. And given the storm surge numbers that we had to move those individuals further inland. And so they were moved to a shelter that was more inland. And so it's quite a dynamic situation with the shelters. So depending on the data, that's why we have the Met Office here all the time. And another good thing is Jamaica has its own Doppler radar. So we can see where the squalls are coming. We can see where the storms are. We know I have a lot of information. And so as we get the information, we actually make those changes. So Newell is actually a shelter. It's just that they're moving individuals from one, right, Mr. Thompson? Moving from one shelter to the other, given the issues with that shelter. And so some changes will happen. We will notify and we'll get the message out as best as possible. We do have parish managers that are responsible for these shelters and are coordinating, and we'll just continue communicating. Right. I know there's
another question right here.
Okay.
Right here.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone, ministers and team. My name is Twyla Whelan, and I am with the Jamaica Information Service. I wanted to ask about the plan of action for special groups, persons with disabilities, expectant mothers, the elderly, especially those who are alone, if there's a specific emergency response for those groups.
Sure. Thank you for that question.
The Office of Disaster Preparedness and the municipal corporations would have in their record, based on assessment that was done by the youth summer employment workers during the summer, to identify communities where the elderly persons who are physically challenged lives. So there is a team that is coordinating those efforts, and in most of the communities that is known. Okay? And then there is the center here where persons can call if they are having difficulty, and we will be able to respond. But basically, all of those things have been taken into consideration because we have done a survey using the youth summer employment workers and the SDC to collect data in communities, working with the political directorate and the disaster coordinators island-wide.
Thank you.
And some of the shelters have been fixed in a way that persons who are physically challenged will have easy access to our shelters.
All right, you can go ahead. Yes.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News. My first question is to Minister Mackenzie. Minister, you told me last night that extra relief efforts were made in those southern parishes that are expected to experience the landfall first. Could you just tell me how successful those efforts were and what they consisted of?
Well, one of the first things that we did is to reposition items that was sent elsewhere once we took that decision. The engagement with the teams on the ground, including the political directorate, the mayors, the councillors, the members of parliament, working with the various entities, the church organization, ISAT, we looked at it, and they are presently working. I know, especially in St. Elizabeth, a lot of work has been done to relocate individuals, and then we have to work with the transport authority to reroute transport. Got a call from the mayor in Port Maria about a situation where a shelter is situated close to the river threatening. We have just made arrangements to relocate the shelter. The persons here have coordinated that. So we are working, and it is work in progress as long as the window allows us to work. But we have done all that is necessary, repositioning the items and provide the requisite transportation to get the individuals to where they are to be.
And on the back of that one, in terms of our teams, and especially in St. Elizabeth, Minister Vaz, I know you want to give an update in terms of JUTC. JUTC has been deployed. They were in particular areas. Last night when we saw where the track for the hurricane had shifted, there were some changes made, and Minister Vaz, you were very instrumental in getting JUTC there. I don't know if you want to give an update now.
Just to say that since they started the press conference, we've gone from 148 evacuations to 301. What have been reported by the JUTC is that the residents are saying that they don't want to leave until late afternoon. So I'm making an appeal. Late afternoon this evening will put you at risk, and it will put the drivers at risk. You need to move, and move now. By this evening, we should be feeling the effects, and it is too late. So we have seen a vast increase in the last hour and a half, from 148 to 301 in different areas. But there are still people with buses ready to move that are saying that they don't want to leave until late afternoon. Late afternoon is too late. I know we have a culture of last minute, but there's no last minute in a hurricane. You need to leave, and you need to leave now. Thank you.
All right. Who has the microphone? You do. Okay. So Mahiri, you can continue with your questions.
Second question is for the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, there seems to be, I guess it's safe to describe them as a select few on the outside looking in that's questioning Jamaica's ability to prepare for something as unprecedented as a Category 5 hurricane. But given our geographic location, given our storied history with hurricane prep, how would you gauge the country's ability to not only prepare for something as unprecedented as this, but to prepare for disasters in general, given where we are?
Mahir, I'm going to answer your question shortly, but as this is such a dynamic situation, I neglected to mention that since the onset of this threat, we have received calls of support from our partners. I don't want to list everyone, but I think I should say the UN, the British, the United States, French, the EU, SEDEMA, which is our local operations. And in fact, all the CARICOM countries have reached out to pledge support in one way, shape, or form. And I want to thank all of them, thank all our partners for being so willing to support our recovery effort and to support our preparation efforts as well. I raise it because in the burial in the burial challenge that we had, it was clear that our coordination and mobilization in this respect was not as efficient as it should have been, which is what prompted me to do a review of our operations. And I believe we are benefiting from that review now. Major General Anderson, now Ambassador Anderson, championed that, and I've been in touch with him recently in terms of just going over what were some of the weak areas in the review. And I believe we have now worked out how to have that fully coordinated, particularly Ministry of Foreign Affairs, ODPEM, Customs, and all the other entities that would be involved in managing the international philanthropic and donor experience. So I think we'll be in a far better shape to ensure that there is greater efficiency and less bureaucracy. The Jamaican bureaucracy is a legend now in frustrating even our own best efforts. And it is our doing, and we have to undo it. But more of that from another time. Now, there is no infrastructure in the region that can withstand a Category 5. There is going to be damage if there is a Category 5. I believe it was Cancun that had a major hit in the last hurricane in Mexico. And we've seen what it did to Puerto Rico and other islands. And those weren't Category 5s. So a Category 5 hurricane will definitely damage roofs. It will definitely compromise infrastructure, even concrete infrastructure. It will scour roads. It will destroy agriculture and vegetation. No doubt it will impact our ports and our airports. There's no question about that. However, if you didn't take precautions to clear the drains, if you didn't take precautions to move people to safety, then the damage is compounded. And that is why we emphasize preparation, because the preparation lessens the damage and it makes the recovery that much easier. And we accept that there's going to be damage, and so you position yourself to deal with the impacts of the damage. So for example, we know after a hurricane, we're going to have mosquitoes and we're going to have dengue if it's not prepared for. So Ministry of Health is putting in place measures to deal with that. I had a good talk with Minister Tufton 2 days ago. He briefed me on what he was doing. But the preparation started, during the COVID period when we bought a fleet of almost 100 vehicles to be used right across the island in vector control. So yes, you're asking, are we prepared? In that instance, yes. In terms of our roads, let's look at it from this perspective. After burial, somehow we forgot that we had almost every day, straight to the first week in December, rains. So we had a hurricane, and then we had a tropical storm, and then we had consistent rains. If you were to accumulate that, that's the impact of a Category 5, scoring all our roads. We made a provision, we declared an emergency. We made a $2 billion provision in addition to a $3 billion program that existed before, and we consistently went about repairing. So yes, as it relates to the driving surface, we would be able to recover from that. Where we might have a problem is with the bridges. Because if bridges are dislocated, yes, you could put up temporary, what do they call them? Bailey bridges. We have about 30 in the island, Mr. Shaw, Stephen, about 30 or less. That smile says it's less. Yeah, that smile tells me that my my initial thought is that yes, we would have a problem with the bridges. We wouldn't have enough to be able to deal with the dislocation of major. And even so, the Bailey bridges would only be able to be used according to a certain span. And so it all depends on what the damage is. So yes, if a category 5 impacted our bridges, we would have a challenge. Thankfully, however, we already have a program in place which is going through the process to replace, to replace 55 bridges. So if any of those 55 that we project to replace were damaged, then we would have to accelerate the process to do that. In terms of telecommunications and the electricity grid of a category 5, thankfully we have pre-positioned linesmen. I know that JPS has the necessary stock, so we should be able to start rebuilding the network if it got hit at a category 5 level. Telecommunications, I suspect our providers have made provisions and have tried to harden their infrastructure to withstand category 5. In terms of trade, meaning the distributive trade, the ability to supply food, and if ports are unable to receive shipments, I'm told that we have supplies that would carry us for at least 12 weeks or more. And we have been told by Petrojam, Minister Vaz left, that they do have approximately 10 days of supplies after of refined products that could carry us after the hurricane has hit. So category 5 would be a really bad disaster, but what I don't want is for Jamaicans to get into a depression that it would be the end of the world. What I want you to always be is positive in your outlook, and that even if the worst comes, we will be able to recover. That's the position. Just to say, and we have been saying this for a very long time, but I don't think that the public has internalized it. And I'm going to use this opportunity to say what I have said 100 times already through all my budget presentations, all my speeches to the country, that we're living in a period of time where the norm is disruption through various challenges and events. So the way to describe it is that we're living in a period of time where you have multiple, frequent, intense, overlapping challenges and events. And we just have to become accustomed to that. Someone said to me, Prime Minister, you look so calm, and we're all panicking. We've come used to crises. All right, so it's, as I said, bear it in mind. At any one time, you have multiple, and they will happen frequently, often. They will overlap, so they're not going to be sequential. So from this, you're going to have a tropical storm moving into a hurricane, and then out of a hurricane, lingering rains, and then lingering rains, you're going to have health crises, inflation problems, fuel problems, all kinds of multiple crises happening all at once. And that's it. The challenge with the time that we're living in is that they're now intense. So it's not that we didn't have hurricanes before, they're now intense. You're seeing a hurricane that would have formed in the Eastern Caribbean and made its way very quickly to a category 5 and then hit Jamaica. That was burial. Unusual, but very intense. Now you see a hurricane forming and sitting right below Jamaica, threatening for almost a week. And we have never seen that. Just sitting there, gathering strength, threatening to unleash it on us. Again, it's intense. And that's what we face. All right. Now, in a situation where you have these multiple crises that are intense, that are overlapping, you have to be able to manage the public narrative, discourse, and information around it in a democratic way, in a democracy. In a democracy, everyone opinion counts. So even someone who is speaking utter nonsense, their opinion counts. And in today's world, not only does it count, it can be published and broadcast, and it can impact other people's perspective. So managing crises becomes even more difficult. So there's, so for example, we would have seen someone posting, and we've seen even television stations, radio stations posting, oh, we've seen this gully here, and they said it was clean, and it wasn't clean, and the buildup of debris at the end of the gully is going to cause flooding. Again, it's a concern. It is a legitimate concern, but balance that against the totality of the information. I mean, could the government clean it right away? And with the resources that we have, should we dedicate it to clean that, or should we dedicate it to clean our own Spanish Town Bridge and open up the tributaries? In other words, so you present one side of the story, someone takes it and says, see, government's not doing anything. You know what? I'm not going to listen to what the government says. I'm going to stay right here. And that's the part of the challenge you face in managing crises, which is why we stand here and go through every day, give you the information, because we have to counter some of what is being published, which does not make sense. And we rely on our media, our journalists, to capture the information accurately and relate accurately. This is not a defense against incompetence in government, because I'm the first to tell you that it's not perfect and there are issues in the government. But we must seek to put information in context, right? We have to put the information in context. Otherwise, information without context can just create chaos and challenges. So again, yes, to answer your question, Mahiri, a category 5, a category 4, even a category 3 is a challenge. Will we be able to recover? Yes. There is no infrastructure now that is foolproof for a category 5 within this region. I think globally, any category 5 will cause damage. Can we recover? Preparation improves your chances of recovery. So what we're doing now, including the informationalization of the population, giving the population enough information to make decisions that are aligned to the national good, that helps the recovery. And the question now would be the speed of recovery. That's a challenge. A category 5 will necessarily be a longer period of recovery. And that's what we really would want to have to go through that. And the measure of the recovery would be the number of quarters we spend in negative or low growth as a result. And we're trying to minimize that.
All right, I have some from online, from other your colleagues online. So I'll go to TVJ for another question from TVJ.
Very quickly, Minister, can you state so far how much the government has spent on hurricane preparations? That's one. And I know it's early yet, but based on the forecast from the Met Office, is it a possibility that Jamaica's catastrophic bond will be triggered in this instance?
All right. So in terms of the number, in terms of how much we've spent so far, won't be able to give you that right now. We're kind of in the middle of, prep. We're not really adding up numbers right now, but we're spending appropriate numbers in terms of what we need to do to prepare. I'm going to add your question on the storm in relation to the catastrophe bond to a question that we do have for Evan. And so I'm going to go through those questions and we'll make sure that your question is answered. So I'm looking for the questions that are online, and I know Zara Burton had submitted some questions, and so I will ask those, and I think she is asking in her Reuters capacity. And I see, Minister, can you please give an update on how many people can be accommodated in the shelters? She notes that 28,000 reside in the affected areas based on the data that we do have from SDC, and she wanted to know if we have enough space for all of them. And I think the answer to that is a yes. We will, and it's not everybody that is threatened, and so we will make sure that we have sufficient space for those who need it. There was another question that she had about Port Royal. She spoke to a resident in Port Royal about evacuation, who said that the buses had indeed come, and that they did not like their experience at the shelters in the past. You would have heard earlier today that the minister has said that there will be food at the shelters and that there will be security at the shelter. So there's no need for anyone to worry about that. Food has been pre-positioned. We will have food available at the shelters. And I believe there was another one in relation to Portland Cottage. So Evan, if you can keep this in mind, her question was about a storm surge in Portland Cottage. She wants to know if that is correct. I also have another question, which is in relation to if it keeps going west, what does that mean for us, and should we expect it to keep going west? So Evan, I'm going to ask you to answer those particular questions.
Okay, well, let me start with that question about whether Portland Cottage would be experiencing any significant storm surge. It is quite likely. Portland Cottage will not be very close to the center, but it will still come under some of the major wind speeds that are expected to move onto the coast around that center. So it's not sufficiently far from the center for them not to experience those speeds pushing the waves onto the coastline. So that's to answer that question from Zara Burton. The other question had to do with oh, yes. Well, we expect that it will continue going west for a while, but in a short period of time, within the early part of this afternoon, the expectation is that it would start to turn toward the north. And so that's when we're monitoring to see whether or not we will actually see that turning taking place this afternoon. The later it happens, the better it is for us, I think. But we are continuing to monitor to see how quickly that turn will actually happen across us. The wind, the strength of when it makes landfall, we are expecting that this hurricane will be a Category 4 hurricane on the coastline. They are projecting wind speeds roughly 140. Is it? No, it's over 200. It's in the range of the Category 4 hurricane speeds anyway that are expected over the island at that time. I'm seeing maximum winds of about 140 knots. 140 knots. And well, I'd have to make that calculation for you. We normally give you the wind speeds in miles per hour and kilometers per hour. So I'll have to calculate that. But that is in the range of Category 4 status. Thank you.
And I believe there was a question re the bonds, and as always, remember that they're triggered by particular events. And so we have one on the CRIF that is triggered by how strong the hurricane is when it makes landfall. And we also have an excess rainfall policy that will be triggered if we have rainfall above a particular threshold. And so the team will be monitoring that, and of course the technical teams will work through what the actual numbers are, and so that will determine if it is triggered, and we will let you know as soon as we do know whether or not it will be triggered. I believe those are the main questions that we have. I don't see any other questions here, but our Prime Minister spoke about prayer, and we're going to be ending in prayer. And before we do that, though, I just want to note that we'll continue to put out information to you. There will be no information vacuum. Please go on the Prime Minister's page, GIS page, ODPEM's page, and you will get accurate information. We are planning to do another mini briefing later this evening because Tomorrow, we don't know if we'll be able to have this setup going and be able to get the feed out. So we're going to do one final briefing with the Met Office, the ODPEM team. Later this evening, we will announce what time that will take place. That will give us some time to know where the track has gone, what we're expecting overnight. I know in the night it's usually scary for people. And so before you go to bed tonight, you will be hearing from us and we'll give you the latest information so that you are indeed informed. And so we're going to be having prayer now, and it is going to come from ADRA. And yesterday I was saying that I didn't have anyone here who was praying, and I had someone who was here who was saying, oh, I could have prayed. I'm a pastor. And so he's with the Adventist Relief Agency, and they're here providing a lot of support to us. And so we are going to have a prayer to close out this press briefing, a prayer for Jamaica. And so please, everybody, listen to the warnings, listen to all of the information here. And as always, join with your family, join with your friends, and let us all pray for Jamaica.
Good morning. Afternoon, right? Good afternoon. I am Pastor Patrick Boyne. I am representing Pastor Country Director Henry. He's not able to be here right now, so I'm here just in his capacity trying to offer as much assistance as we can in our capacity. So I want to greet the Prime Minister and other ministers and all the other members of the National Disaster Risk Management Council, our first responders, our representatives from various institutions and partners, members of the media, and all those joining us on television and online. I believe that we all believe, Prime Minister, that prayer changes things. And so at this time, I invite you all to join me in standing, taking on an attitude of reverence as we look to our... Okay, not all can stand. If you can, if you can, just stand, take an attitude of reverence as we look to our God in prayer. Heavenly Father, Creator and Sustainer of all things, we come before you in this moment, humbling ourselves in your presence. You are Jehovah Nissi, the great protector, our ever-present help in time of trouble. We acknowledge that all creation is in your hands, and that we thank you for the grace and mercy you have shown, even now as we see your mighty hand causing even a slight shift to this storm. We are grateful for your protection over us and our beautiful island. Lord, we lift our leaders and all those who are tasked with coordinating and managing this process of preparedness and advisories and care. We ask that you grant them wisdom to seek you first, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Let them know that without vision, the people will perish. Guide them in every decision, in every strategy, in every word spoken. We pray for everyone present on this island, whether citizen or resident or visitors. Keep us safe as the storm passes. Surrender us with your peace and your protection. And help us to remember that we are our brother's keepers. Lord, your word reminds us that whatever we do for the least of these brothers and sisters, we do unto you. We give thanks for all the well-thinking Jamaicans, both here and in the diaspora. For all our partners, both local and international. We pray that the spirit of philanthropy be rekindled, and you, God, will multiply and stretch the resources that we have, Lord, as you alone can, to reach those in need and to encourage and to ensure that no one is left without help. Father, in this time of uncertainty, give us calm spirit. Grant us patience and keep our hearts hopeful. Help us to trust in you. Trust your heart even when we can't trace your hand. For we know that without faith it is impossible to please you. Lead on, O King eternal, and guide us through this. Be a shelter in the time of storm. We pray all in the mighty name of Jesus. So I encourage us to join in this prayer as we say, Eternal Father, bless our land. Guard us with thy mighty hand. Keep us free from evil powers. Be our light through countless hours. To our leaders, great defenders, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth, be yours forever. Jamaica land we love. Teach us true respect for all. Stir response to duty's call. Strengthen us the weak to cherish. Give us vision lest we perish. Knowledge send us, Heavenly Father. Grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth, be yours forever. Jamaica land we love. Amen.
Thank you so much. I mean, it was just at the last minute, Pastor Patrick Bowen from the Adventist Disaster Relief Agency. Thank you so much for that prayer. And so we are going to be closing out this press briefing. PM, you said you were calm. I got something this morning that said that in the midst of a storm, God either quiets the storm or quiets the person leading those in the storm. And I think he has blessed you very much, PM. And so thank you all, and God bless Jamaica, and we'll see you later this evening for another briefing. Thank you. We're working on that.
I know why you come to me with that foolishness, you know. You elect a prime minister, and is a prime minister run the country. It is time we learn to hold our leaders accountable for their actions and stop making excuses for them. Stop making excuses. Otherwise, go elect the people who really run in the country. And I don't want to right there that stupid argument. Hold the people you elect accountable and stop making excuses for them.